Han walked through the massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber. His simple black suit looked plain next to the bright armor and strange clothing of thousands of alien beings. The chamber was huge, so huge that Han felt like a tiny ant, walking into a giant cave. Above him, crystal formations hung from the ceiling. They glowed with soft blue light. The floor beneath his feet was made of smooth metal that seemed to move like water. Sounds echoed everywhere. Clicking sounds, buzzing sounds, strange musical notes that hurt his ears. Han kept walking forward. He could feel eyes watching him, thousands of eyes. Some were like human eyes. Others were completely different. Some, aliens, had 10 eyes. Some had eyes that glowed red. Some had no eyes at all but seemed to see him anyway. The alien beings sat in floating chairs arranged in circles around the center of the room. Each circle was higher than the one below it. The highest circle was so far up that Han could barely see the creatures sitting there. Their voices came down like thunder. "Look at this weak thing," said a voice that sounded like metal scraping against stone. "This is what Earth sends to represent them." Han looked up and saw General Thexmore of the Vorthak Empire. The general was huge. His body was covered in thick, black armor that moved like it was alive. Steam came out of holes in his helmet. His voice made the air shake when he spoke. "I have seen stronger creatures in my waste disposal units," General Thexmore continued. "How did this species even learn to build spaceships?" Laughter filled the chamber. Not human laughter. This was different. Some aliens made sounds like breaking glass. Others sounded like dying animals. The noise was so loud that Han had to cover his ears. Near the top of the chamber sat Quindar from the Celestial Dominion. His body was made of pure light that changed colors as he spoke. "Earth is nothing but a mud ball floating in empty space," Quindar said. His voice sounded like singing, but cold and mean. "Why are we wasting time with these primitive creatures?" More laughter. Han kept walking. His steps echoed in the huge space. Each step sounded tiny compared to the voices of the aliens around him. Council Leader Zephys raised one of his 4 arms. He was tall and thin with skin that looked like silver metal. His head had no hair but was covered in small holes that opened and closed as he breathed. When he spoke, all other sounds stopped. "We are here today to judge the humans," Zephys announced. "Like all new species that wish to join our great galactic community, they must pass the challenge of worth." Han reached the center of the chamber. A small platform rose from the floor beneath his feet. Now he was higher up but still far below most of the alien beings. The platform felt warm under his shoes. "The challenge of worth is simple," Zephys continued. "Each species must show us their power. They must prove they can help our galactic civilization. They must show they are not weak." Around the chamber, screens began to glow. They showed images of other species during their challenges. Han saw creatures that could lift mountains with their minds. He saw beings that could create new stars with their bare hands. He saw armies of robots that could destroy entire planets in minutes. "Those who fail the challenge are sent away forever," Zephys said. "They are never allowed to leave their homeworld again. They become prisoners on their own planet." The Supreme Chancellor Mordek of the Titanium Throne stood up. His body was covered in golden metal. Jewels covered his arms and legs. When he moved, the jewels made music. "Let us see what these humans can do," he said. "Though I expect nothing impressive." "Wait," said Admiral Kethmara from the Void Fleet. She looked like a giant octopus made of black metal. Her tentacles moved in the air as she spoke. "Before we begin, let me ask something. Human, what weapons do you bring? What armies follow you? What power do you command?" Han looked up at her. His voice was quiet but clear. "I have no weapons," he said. "No armies follow me. I have no special powers." The chamber exploded with noise again. This time the laughter was even louder. Some aliens fell out of their floating chairs, others made sounds like they were choking. "No weapons," repeated General Thexmore. "No armies. No powers. Then what exactly do you plan to show us, little human?" "I would like to speak," Han said. "Speak." The word came from Emperor Vashitar of the Crimson Dynasty. He was covered in red scales that moved like fire. His eyes glowed like small suns. You want to speak? That is your great demonstration of power. Words. Yes, Han replied. I would like to say one word. The laughter stopped. Silence filled the massive chamber. Even the crystal formations above seemed to stop glowing as brightly. The only sound was the soft hum of the floating chairs. One word, Zephys repeated slowly. You wish to speak only one word as your challenge of worth. Yes, Han said again. Chief Arbiter Zalketh leaned forward. His body looked like it was made of living stone with moss growing on it. Small trees grew from his shoulders. In all my centuries of service to this council, no species has ever asked to speak only one word. Usually they beg for mercy, or they threaten us with their weapons, or they try to impress us with their technology. What could one word possibly accomplish? Asked Quindar. The light that made up his body flickered with what might have been curiosity. Han stood quietly on his platform. Around him, thousands of alien beings waited. Some leaned forward in their chairs. Others whispered to each other in languages that sounded like static or wind or flowing water. The truth was that Han had not always been a diplomat. Before Earth chose him to come to this council, he had been Dr. Li Han. He studied stars and planets and the physics of space. But he also studied something else. He studied the human mind. He studied how humans thought differently from other creatures. He studied what made humans special in ways that had nothing to do with strength or technology. The council had chosen their greatest warriors and their most advanced species to demonstrate power. They expected humans to do the same. They expected fear. They expected submission. They expected humans to beg for acceptance into their galactic community. They had no idea what they were actually about to face. They had no idea that humans had been studying them for months. They had no idea that this quiet man in a simple black suit was about to change everything they thought they knew about power. Very well, Zephys said finally. You may speak your one word, human, but know that after you speak we will judge you. And I do not think one word will be enough to save your species from exile. Han nodded. He took a deep breath. Around him, the massive chamber held its breath and waited. 3 months before Han stood in the Galactic Council chamber, something happened that changed everything. The event took place on a small human colony world called Kepler 442b. Most aliens had never heard of this tiny planet. It was just another rock floating in space with a few thousand humans living on it. The Zarian collective decided to test these new humans. The Zarians were proud warriors. Their bodies were covered in thick purple skin that could stop laser bullets. They had 4 arms and legs that could run faster than human cars. Their teeth were sharp enough to bite through steel. For 3,000 years, no enemy had ever defeated them in battle. Commander Velthara led 5,000 Zarian warriors to the human colony. She expected an easy victory. The humans had no real weapons. They had no armor. They had no special powers. Velthara thought the battle would be over in one day. Captain Kim Jae was the leader of the human colony defense force. He was not a soldier. Before coming to Kepler 442b, he had been a teacher on Earth. He taught children about history and science. When the Zarian ships appeared in the sky, Kim Jae had only 200 volunteers to defend the colony. The volunteers were not soldiers, either. There was Mrs. Park who ran the colony bakery. There was Mr. Lee who fixed broken machines. There was young Ms. Song who grew vegetables in the colony greenhouse. None of them had ever fought in a real war. When Commander Velthara sent her first message to the colony, she expected the humans to surrender immediately. Her voice boomed from speakers all around the colony buildings. Humans of Kepler 442b, she announced. You will surrender now. You will become servants of the Zarian collective. Anyone who fights will be killed. Kim Jae sent back a simple message. No thank you, he said politely. We would prefer to stay free. Velthara was confused. She had conquered 40 planets before this one. Every species had either surrendered immediately or begged for mercy. These humans seemed to think they could actually fight back. The first Zarian attack came at dawn. 1,000 warriors dropped from the sky in metal pods. They landed around the main colony building. Their weapons could melt holes through thick walls. Their armor protected them from the humans' simple guns. But something strange happened during the first battle. The humans did not fight the way other species fought. They did not try to match the Xerian strength with strength. Instead, they did something the Xerians had never experienced before. Captain Kim Jae had studied the Xerian species for weeks before the attack. He learned that Xerians had very good hearing, much better than human hearing. He also learned that Xerians were very proud of their war cries. They made loud roaring sounds before attacking. These sounds were supposed to scare their enemies. Kim Jae decided to use the Xerions' strengths against them. When the first group of Xerion warriors began their attack, the humans were ready with something unexpected. As the Xerions roared and charged toward the colony building, speakers hidden all around the area began playing sounds. But these were not normal sounds. The humans had recorded the death screams of Xerion warriors from old battle videos. They had made these sounds much louder and played them at frequencies that hurt Xerion ears. The attacking warriors heard what sounded like hundreds of their own people dying in terrible pain. The sounds came from everywhere at once. The Xerions could not tell where the real sounds ended and the recorded sounds began. Their excellent hearing, which usually helped them in battle, now became a weakness. But that was not the worst part. After playing the death screams, the humans did something even more disturbing. They made all sounds stop. Complete silence fell over the battlefield. The Xerions were used to hearing their enemies scream in fear. They were used to the sounds of battle. This silence was more frightening than any scream. In the silence, the humans attacked. But they did not attack with guns or bombs. They attacked with psychology. They had studied how the Xerion mind worked. They knew that Xerions became confused when they could not understand their enemy. Small groups of humans would appear from hiding spots, fire a few shots, then disappear again. They never stayed to fight face to face. They never made any sounds. They moved like ghosts through the colony buildings. The Xerions began to feel like they were fighting invisible enemies. The end of the first day, 50 Xerion warriors were dead, but the real damage was not physical. The surviving Xerions were mentally broken. They jumped at small sounds. They fired their weapons at shadows. They began to fear the silence more than enemy attacks. Commander Velthara tried to rally her troops for a second attack. But when she looked into their eyes, she saw something she had never seen before. Fear. Real fear. Her proud warriors, who had never lost a battle, were afraid of humans who had no special powers or weapons. The second attack was worse than the first. This time, the humans had prepared even more psychological tricks. They used lights that flashed, in patterns that hurt Xerion eyes. They released smells that reminded Xerions of death and sickness. They played sounds that made the warriors think they were going insane. By the third day, the remaining Xerion warriors refused to leave their ships. They sat in their metal pods and shook with fear. Commander Velthara tried to order them to attack, but they would not obey. Some of them had stopped eating. Others had stopped sleeping. All of them begged to leave the planet. The humans had won without ever winning a real battle. They had defeated a superior enemy by attacking something the Xerions did not know they could lose. Their minds. Commander Velthara finally ordered a retreat. As the Xerion ships left Kepler 442b, she sent one last message to Captain Kim Jae. "What are you?" she asked. "What kind of creatures are humans?" Kim Jae's answer was simple. "We are the species that survived ice ages and plagues and wars on our home planet," he said. "We learned long ago that the strongest weapon is not always the biggest gun. Sometimes the strongest weapon is just refusing to give up." News of the defeat spread quickly through the Galaxies' underground communication networks. Most major powers ignored the reports. They thought the stories were lies or exaggerations. How could primitive humans defeat advanced Xerion warriors? But the reports were true. And now, 3 months later, Ambassador Li Han stood before the Galactic Council. The council members had no idea that they were looking at a representative of the species that had just taught the galaxy a new kind of fear. The silence in the council chamber felt heavy. Thousands of alien beings waited to hear what one human would say with a single word. Some leaned forward in their floating chairs. Others whispered to each other in strange languages. The crystal formations above seemed to dim as if they too were listening. Council leader Zephys raised one of his 4 silver arms. "You may speak your word now, human," he said. His voice echoed through the massive chamber. "But remember, after you speak, we will judge whether your species deserves to exist freely in this galaxy." Li Han stood quietly on his small platform, in the center of the chamber. He looked up at the thousands of alien faces staring down at him. Some had eyes like fire. Others had no faces at all. He could feel their expectation. They wanted him to beg. They wanted him to show fear. They wanted him to prove that humans were weak. Instead, Han spoke clearly and calmly. His voice carried through the chamber's perfect acoustics. "No." The word hung in the air like smoke. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The silence stretched, on and on. Then confusion began to spread through the council. Alien beings turned to each other with puzzled expressions. Some made sounds that might have been questions. Others simply stared at Han as if they could not believe what they had heard. General Thexmore was the first to break the silence. Steam shot out of his armor as he stood up. "What does this mean?" he demanded. "No what? No to what question?" Han looked up at the general. His expression did not change. "No," he repeated. Supreme Chancellor Mordek of the Titanium Throne stood up next. His golden armor caught the light from the crystal formations above. The jewels on his body made musical sounds as he moved. "Human, you must explain yourself," he said. "The council requires a proper demonstration of power." "No," Han said again. Admiral Kethmara's metal tentacles writhed in the air. "This is ridiculous," she announced. "The human is clearly broken. Perhaps his mind is too simple to understand what we require." "No," Han replied. Chief Arbiter Zalketh leaned forward. The small trees growing from his stone-like shoulders rustled as he moved. "In 3,000 years of serving this council," he said slowly, "I have never encountered a species that simply refused to participate in the challenge of worth." Emperor Vashitar's red scales flickered like flames. His sun-bright eyes focused on Han. "Every species that comes before this council seeks something," he said. "They want protection. They want technology. They want trade agreements. They want to join our civilization. What do humans want?" Han's answer came without hesitation. "Nothing." This single word hit the council like a physical blow. Murmurs spread through the chamber like ripples on water. The word was even more shocking than Han's repeated refusals. "Nothing," repeated Council Leader Zephys. "You want nothing from us." "Correct," Han said. "Then why are you here?" asked Quindar. The light that made up his body flickered rapidly, showing his confusion. "You invited us," Han replied simply. The truth of this statement made several council members shift uncomfortably in their chairs. It was true. The Galactic Council had sent the invitation to Earth. They had demanded that humanity send a representative. They had insisted on this meeting. "But every species wants something," insisted Admiral Kethmara. "Every species needs something from galactic civilization." "We do not," Han said. "Impossible," declared General Thexmore. "Your species is primitive. You have no advanced technology. You have no powerful weapons. You have no natural abilities beyond the normal. You must need our help to survive." Han finally showed the first hint of emotion. A small smile appeared on his face. "General Thexmore," he said, "may I ask you a question?" "Speak," the general replied. "How many species has your empire conquered?" Han asked. 412. "Worlds have surrendered to Vorthak might," Thexmore answered proudly. "And how many of those species conquered you first?" The question hung in the air. General Thexmore's armor made grinding sounds as he processed the meaning. "None," he admitted. "No species has ever conquered the Vorthak Empire." "Then you have never learned what we have learned," Han said. His voice remained calm. but something in his tone made the chamber grow quieter. You have never learned how to survive when you are the weakest. You have never learned how to win when you have no hope of winning. He paused and looked around. The chamber. Every species in this council became strong first, then conquered others. Humans became strong by being conquered, by surviving ice ages that should have killed us, by living through plagues that destroyed most of our population, by fighting wars against our own kind for thousands of years. Chief Arbiter Zalketh's tree-covered shoulders rustled. What does this have to do with your refusal to participate in our challenge? Everything, Han replied. Your challenge assumes that we want to join your civilization. It assumes that we need your approval to exist. It assumes that we fear being exiled from galactic society. He spread his arms wide, gesturing to the massive chamber around him. But we do not want to join your civilization. We do not need your approval. And we do not fear being alone. Emperor Vashitar's scales flared brighter. You cannot survive alone in this galaxy, he said. There are threats out there that would destroy your entire species. Pirates, plague worlds, rogue artificial intelligences, dark matter storms. You need the protection of galactic civilization. Do we? Han asked. Or do you need us to believe that we need you? This question sent shockwaves through the council. Several alien beings made sounds of distress. Others began talking rapidly to each other in their native languages. Council leader Zephys raised all four arms for silence. Human, he said carefully, are you saying that your species rejects the authority of this council? I am saying that your authority does not apply to us, Han replied. You rule species that chose to be ruled. We choose not to be ruled. That is not how galactic civilization works, protested Supreme Chancellor Mordek. All spacefaring species must follow galactic law. No, Han said again. They do not. If you do not follow our laws, we will enforce them, threatened Admiral Kethamara. How? Han asked simply. The question was so direct, so unexpected, that the Admiral found herself without an immediate answer. Around the chamber, other council members also fell silent. They were used to species that feared their power. They were not prepared for a species that questioned whether their power was real. We have fleets, Admiral Kethmara finally said. We have weapons that can destroy planets. So do we, Han replied calmly. Impossible, snorted General Thexmore. Our intelligence reports show that humans have barely achieved interstellar travel. Your ships are primitive. Your weapons are simple. Han's smile grew slightly wider. Your intelligence reports show you what we want you to see, he said, for the first time since the council session began, real unease spread through the chamber. The alien beings began to realize that they might not know as much about humans as they thought they did. Are you threatening us? Asked Emperor Vashitar. No, Han said. I am explaining to you why threats do not work on humans. We are a species that has been threatened with extinction many times. We are still here. Threats are just noise to us. He looked up at the thousands of alien faces staring down at him. You asked me to demonstrate human power, he said. So I will tell you what human power really is. Human power is the ability to say no to anyone, anywhere, at any time, even when saying no seems impossible. The chamber fell into complete silence. Even the soft humming of the floating chairs seemed to stop. Every being in the vast space was trying to understand what they had just heard. Finally, Council Leader Zephys spoke. What happens now? He asked quietly. Han turned toward the chamber's exit. Now I go home, he said. And you decide whether you want to be our friends or our enemies. But remember this. We did not ask to be here, we do not need to be here, and we will not be here much longer. As he walked toward the massive doors, his footsteps echoed through the silent chamber. Behind him, the most powerful beings in the galaxy sat in stunned silence, trying to understand how a single word had changed everything they thought they knew about power. Han had taken only 3 steps toward the exit when the chamber erupted in chaos. Alien voices rose in anger, confusion, and something that sounded like panic. The crystal formations above began flashing in bright colors. Warning sounds echoed from hidden speakers. "Stop," commanded Council Leader Zephys. His voice boomed through the chamber with such force that the metal floor vibrated. No species has ever walked out of a challenge of worth before completing it. Han stopped walking but did not turn around. "I have completed it," he said over his shoulder. "I demonstrated human power. You simply do not understand what you saw." General Thexmore's armor began glowing red with heat. Steam poured from the joints as his internal systems prepared for battle. "You have demonstrated nothing but disrespect," he roared. "The Vorthak Empire does not tolerate such insults." "What will you do about it?" Han asked. He still had not turned around. The question was so calm, so direct, that it seemed to hit General Thexmore like a physical blow. His glowing armor flickered as he tried to process the challenge. "I will order my fleets to destroy your homeworld," the general finally declared. "Earth will burn until nothing remains but floating rocks." Han finally turned back to face the council. His expression had not changed, but something in his eyes was different now. Colder. "General," he said quietly, "I need to tell you something. Important." The chamber fell silent again. Even the warning sounds from the speakers stopped. 3 months ago, Han continued, a human colony named Kepler 442b was attacked by Zerion warriors. 5,000 of them. They fought 200 human volunteers. Would you like to know what happened? Commander Velthara, of the Zerion Collective, stood up from her seat near the top of the chamber. Her purple skin had turned pale. "Do not speak of that," she said, but her voice shook. "The humans won," Han said simply. "They won without superior weapons. They won without advanced technology. They won by doing something the Zerions had never experienced before. They won by refusing to be afraid." He looked up at Commander Velthara. "Commander, would you like to tell the council what happened to your warriors' minds?" "Silence," Velthara hissed, but she sat back down quickly. Han turned to address the entire council. "Since that day, humans have been preparing for visitors. We assumed that other species might not appreciate what we did to the Zerions. We assumed correctly." Admiral Kethamara's tentacles writhed in agitation. "Your preparations mean nothing," she declared. "My Void Fleet has ships that can crack moons in half. What could primitive humans possibly do against such power?" Before Han could answer, a soft chiming sound came from communication devices all around the chamber. Council members began checking their personal screens. What they saw made many of them make sounds of alarm. "What is this?" demanded Supreme Chancellor Mordek, staring at his golden screen with wide eyes. "Those are human ships," Han said calmly. "They appeared at the edge of every major system in the galaxy about 10 minutes ago, right around the time I said the word no." Chief Arbiter Zalketh was reading reports from his tree-covered screen. "Impossible," he muttered. "The reports say there are thousands of them. Hundreds of thousands. Where did they come from?" "We built them," Han replied. "Humans are very good at building things when we need to." Emperor Vashatar's scales were now burning so bright that other council members had to shield their eyes. "Our sensors show these ships are crude," he said. "Primitive designs, simple weapons. They pose no real threat." "You are correct," Han agreed. "Each individual ship is not very dangerous. But there are a lot of them. And they are not attacking anyone, they are just waiting." The word waiting seemed to echo through the chamber. Around the great space, alien beings were receiving more and more reports from their homeworlds. Human ships were everywhere, but they were not doing anything threatening. They just sat in space, silent and still. "This is psychological warfare," announced Quindar. His light body flickered rapidly as he spoke. "They are trying to make us afraid by showing us their numbers." "Is it working?" Han asked. The question hung in the air. Looking around the chamber, it was clear that yes, it was working. Council members who had seemed confident and powerful now looked worried. Some were giving urgent orders to their military commanders. Others were demanding immediate reports from their intelligence services. Han's communication device began beeping, softly. He looked at it and smiled. "Excuse me," he said to the council. "I have a message from Earth." He pressed a button on the device. A woman's voice filled the chamber. It was Dr. Yoon Seo, speaking in clear, unaccented galactic standard. "Greetings to the Galactic Council," Dr. Yoon Seo said. "My name is Dr. Yoon Seo, and I represent Earth's Defense Planning Committee. I want to make something very clear to everyone listening." The chamber was completely silent now. Every alien being was focused on the small device in Han's hand. "Humans do not want war," Dr. Yoon Seo continued. "We have never wanted war, but we have spent the last 3 months studying your military capabilities, your supply routes, your defensive positions, and your weaknesses. We know where every major fleet is located. We know which systems depend on trade routes. We know which planets cannot survive without regular supply deliveries." Several council members began making distressed sounds. Admiral Kethmara's tentacles were now moving so rapidly they looked like a blur. "We also know something else," Dr. Yoon Seo said. "We know that most of your military power depends on fear. You have ruled this galaxy for so long that you have forgotten what it feels like to face an enemy that is not afraid of you." Emperor Vashatar stood up, his burning scales casting dancing shadows on the chamber walls. "Enough of this," he declared. "I will not be lectured by primitive creatures." Dr. Yoon Seo's voice continued as if she had heard him. "To prove our point, we would like to share something with the Council. We would like to show you what humans do when we are not afraid." The screens around the chamber began displaying new images. They showed Earth, but not the Earth that most aliens expected to see. Instead of a primitive world with simple technology, they saw cities that floated in the sky. They saw ships being built in space factories that stretched for hundreds of kilometers. They saw weapons that the Council's scientists could not even identify. "This is impossible," whispered Chief Arbiter Zalketh. "Our surveys of Earth showed nothing like this." "Your surveys showed you what we wanted you to see," Dr. Yoon Seo replied. "Humans learned long ago that appearing weak can be more useful than appearing strong. But we are not weak. We are careful." More images flashed on the screens. They showed human colonies on planets that the Council thought were uninhabited. They showed mining operations in asteroid fields that were supposed to be empty. They showed evidence of human presence throughout the galaxy, hidden and quiet, but definitely there. "How many of you are there?" asked Council Leader Zephys in a shaken voice. "Enough," Han replied simply. General Thexmore was now making angry, growling sounds. "I do not care how many ships you have," he declared. "I do not care how well you hide. The Vorthak Empire has conquered hundreds of worlds. We will conquer yours too." "General," Han said quietly, "do you remember what I said about humans surviving by being conquered?" "What of it?" Thexmore snarled. "We learned something during all those conquests," Han replied. "We learned that the best way to defeat a conqueror is not to fight their strength. It is to attack their weakness." "The Vorthak have no weaknesses," the general declared. Dr. Yoon Seo's voice came from the communication device again. "General Thexmore, your empire controls 412 worlds. Every one of those worlds depends on regular supply shipments from your industrial planets. Your fleets are powerful, but they require constant refueling and maintenance. Your soldiers are fierce, but they need food and equipment shipped from your home systems." The general's armor began making grinding sounds as he realized what she was suggesting. "What happens to your empire?" Dr. Yoon Seo continued. "If those supply lines are cut, not by attacking your fleets, but by quietly disabling the trade ships that keep your civilization running? What happens when your soldiers are stranded on distant worlds with no fuel for their ships and no food for their bodies?" Similar realizations were spreading through the Council. Every major power in the galaxy depended on complex systems of trade, supply, and communication. Systems that had grown over thousands of years. Systems that had never been seriously threatened because no enemy had ever been patient enough or clever enough to attack them properly. "You are talking about the complete destruction of galactic civilization," said Emperor Vashatar in a horrified voice. "No," Han replied. We are talking about showing you what happens when you try to force humans to do something they do not want to do. We are a species that survived ice ages by learning to live without the things we thought we needed. We can survive the collapse of galactic civilization because we never depended on it in the first place. He looked around the chamber at thousands of alien faces that were no longer confident or threatening. The question is, can you? For the first time in the recorded history of the Galactic Council, the chamber fell into a silence born not of respect or ceremony, but of genuine fear. The most powerful beings in the galaxy were beginning to understand that they had encountered something they had never faced before, a species that could destroy them not through superior strength but through superior will, a species that could win wars by simply refusing to lose them, a species that had turned their greatest weakness into their greatest weapon. The gods of the galaxy were remembering what it felt like to be afraid. The fear in the council chamber was almost physical. It hung in the air like smoke, thick and choking. Alien beings who had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years now sat in their floating chairs like frightened children. Some were shaking. Others had stopped making any sounds at all. Council leader Zephys was the first to break the terrible silence. His 4 silver arms trembled as he spoke. "What do you want from us?" he asked in a voice barely above a whisper. Han looked up at him with calm eyes. "I told you already," he said. "We want nothing." "That cannot be true," insisted Admiral Kethamara. Her metal tentacles had stopped moving entirely. "Every species wants something. Trade agreements, technology exchanges, protection pacts, territory, rights. What is your price for leaving us alone?" "We do not have a price," Han replied. "We do not want your technology. We do not need your protection. We do not seek your territory. We simply want to exist without your interference." Supreme Chancellor Mordek's golden armor had lost its shine. The jewels that usually made music when he moved were now silent. "But surely you understand," he pleaded. "Galactic civilization requires order. It requires laws. It requires someone to maintain peace between species." "For you, perhaps," Han said. "Not for us." Emperor Vashtar made one last attempt at showing strength. His red scales flared brighter as he stood up. "You think you can simply ignore thousands of years of galactic law," he declared. "You think you can operate outside our authority. We do not think it," Han replied calmly. "We are doing it." The Emperor's flames flickered and began to dim. "But what about trade?" he asked, his voice losing its commanding tone. "What about diplomacy? What about cooperation between civilizations?" "If you want to trade with us, we will consider it," Han said. "If you want to cooperate with us on projects that benefit both sides, we will listen. But you will ask us politely, and you will accept our answer if we say no." Chief Arbiter Zalketh leaned forward, the small trees on his shoulders rustling with agitation. "You are describing a complete change to how galactic civilization operates," he said. "For 3,000 years, new species have joined our community by accepting our authority. You are asking us to treat you as equals instead of subjects." "I am not asking you anything," Han corrected. "I am telling you how things will be." The distinction hit the council like another physical blow. They were used to being the ones who made demands. They were used to setting terms and conditions. The idea that a single species could simply announce its own terms was beyond their understanding. General Thexmore made one final attempt at intimidation. His armor began glowing with heat again. "If you will not join our civilization properly, then you are a threat to galactic peace," he declared. "Threats must be eliminated." Han smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. "General," he said, "I have something else to show you." He pressed another button on his communication device. The screens around the chamber lit up with new images. These showed human children playing in parks on Earth. They showed families eating dinner together. They showed people laughing and working and living normal, peaceful lives. "This is what you want to destroy," Han said quietly. "These are the people you want to kill because they refuse to bow to your authority." The images continued. They showed human artists creating beautiful sculptures. They showed scientists making discoveries that could benefit the entire galaxy. They showed engineers building machines that could help solve problems on distant worlds. We are not your enemies, Han continued. We never wanted to be your enemies. We just wanted to be left alone to live our lives in peace. More images appeared. These showed the aftermath of natural disasters on Earth. Earthquakes that had destroyed entire cities, floods that had wiped out millions of people, plagues that had killed huge portions of the human population. But we are also not your victims, Han said, his voice growing stronger. We have survived worse things than you can imagine. We have rebuilt our civilization from nothing more than hope and determination. We have faced extinction and chosen to keep living anyway. The final images showed something that made several council members gasp in recognition. They showed humans helping other species, human doctors treating alien diseases, human engineers fixing broken alien technology, human teachers sharing knowledge with young aliens. This is who we are, Han said. We are the species that survived by helping each other. We are the species that grew strong by refusing to give up. We are the species that learned to win by never accepting defeat. He looked around the chamber one last time. You can choose to be our friends. You can choose to trade with us and learn from us and work with us to make the galaxy a better place. Or you can choose to be our enemies and learn what it means to fight a species that cannot be conquered. But remember this, he continued. We did not choose to be enemies with anyone. That choice will be yours alone. Commander Velthera of the Zerion Collective suddenly stood up. Her purple skin was still pale from remembered fear. I have fought humans, she announced to the council. I have seen what they can do. They do not fight to conquer, they fight to survive. And they will do anything to survive. She looked directly at General Thexmore. General, your empire has conquered many worlds because those worlds eventually surrendered when the cost became too high. Humans do not calculate cost the same way we do. They will pay any price to remain free. Other voices began to join hers. Species that had heard rumors about the human victory on Kepler 442b started, sharing what they knew. Stories spread through the chamber about human determination, human creativity, human refusal to accept defeat. Council leader Zephys raised his forearms for silence. When the chamber quieted, he spoke in a voice heavy with exhaustion. What do you propose we do? He asked Han. Live and let live, Han replied simply. Continue ruling the species that want to be ruled. Continue maintaining order among civilizations that need order maintained. But leave us alone to find our own way. And if conflicts arise between humans and other species, asked Chief Arbiter Zalketh, then we will solve those conflicts the way civilized beings should, Han said, through negotiation and compromise, through mutual respect and understanding, through recognition that different species can have different ways of living. Admiral Kethmara's tentacles began moving slowly again. You make it sound simple, she said. It is simple, Han replied. You have made it complicated by assuming that power must always flow from the top down, by assuming that strength means the right to control others, by assuming that order requires submission. He began walking toward the exit again. Humans offer you a different model, he said over his shoulder. We offer you the possibility of a galaxy where species cooperate because they choose to, not because they are forced to. Wait, called Emperor Vashitar. His flames had dimmed to barely visible flickers. What guarantees do we have that humans will not use their power against us? Han stopped walking and turned back one final time. The same guarantee you give us, he said. None. But perhaps it is time for all of us to learn to live with a little uncertainty. Perhaps it is time to build trust, instead of demanding submission. He resumed walking toward the massive doors. Our ships will withdraw from your systems now, he called back. They were never there to threaten you. They were there to show you that we have the power to threaten you, but choose not to use it. As Han reached the doors, they began to open, with a deep rumbling sound. Beyond them lay the corridor that would take him back to his ship and then home to Earth. Ambassador Han, called Council Leader Zephys. Han paused in the doorway but did not turn around. Will we see you again? Zephys asked. If you need us, Han replied, you know where to find us. But remember, we will only come if you ask politely. With that, he walked through the doors and disappeared into the corridor beyond. The massive doors closed behind him with a final, echoing boom that seemed to mark the end of one era and the beginning of another. The council chamber remained silent. For a long time after Han left, thousands of alien beings sat in their floating chairs, trying to process what had just happened. The crystal formations above had dimmed to their normal soft glow. The warning sounds had stopped. Even the gentle humming of the floating chairs seemed quieter than before. Finally, Council Leader Zephys spoke. Motion to adjourn this session, he said in a tired voice. Seconded, came voices from around the chamber. As the council members began to leave, many of them were already receiving reports from their homeworlds. The human ships were indeed withdrawing from every system, exactly as Han had promised. They departed as quietly as they had arrived, leaving no trace except for the memory of their presence. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy slowly adapted to its new reality. Some species chose to reach out to humanity with offers of trade and cooperation. Others decided to leave the humans alone and hope to be left alone in return. A few, led by General Thexmore, spoke of revenge and retaliation, but their voices grew quieter as time passed and nothing happened. The most surprising change came from the council itself. For the first time in thousands of years, they began to question whether their way of ruling was the only way. Some species that had been forced to join galactic civilization generations ago quietly asked if they too could try.